hope everyone's doing well. For today's call, we're going to be discussing language integrated queries, and your presenter for today is going to be Shiran Fernando. So at any point during the call, if you do have any questions, please feel free to just send them through either via the Zoom chat. And sorry about that. So just send them through the Zoom chat or even the YouTube live chat. We will have time towards the end of the session to answer any of those questions you have. Also, feel free to unmute yourself at the end of the session if you'd just like to ask speakers the questions yourself, or just to have a discussion with the speakers. Just before we jump into the session, I just want to quickly run through a couple of different ways that you can get involved with the Ballerina community. So if you do have any questions at all in regards to Ballerina, you can always jump on our Slack, Google group, or Stack Overflow channels. Our engineers are quite active on those channels, so you can always raise any questions you have on those channels. If you'd like to stay updated with what's going on with Ballerina, you can either subscribe to our newsletter, or you can even follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @BallerinaLang. A couple of different ways that you can also contribute to the Ballerina community. I will be sending across this link to via the chat, so you can have a look at later. But just a couple of things, you can always head over to these links here and contribute towards the language yourself. If you'd like to publish any content or vlogs, you can do that as well, via either your personal resources or external publications. And you can also basically contribute to the source code. And when you do have a chance, please also go ahead and star Ballerina on GitHub. So yeah, that's pretty much it from me. And I'll send this link across so you can have a look at later. So I'm going to hand it over now to Shiran to start the session off. So over to you, Shiran.
Thank you, Ashwini. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Shiran Fernando. Hope you're having a pleasant day. So during today's community call, we'll be discussing how we can use language integrated queries in Ballerina. So during the session, we'll be introducing the language integrated queries. Then we'll have a discussion about how we can use these language integrated queries for data processing. And we'll have a demonstration of an example. Then we'll move on to discussing the future plans of language integrated queries. And at the end of the session, as Ashwini mentioned, we'll have an open discussion where you can raise questions. And to begin with, so let's talk a little bit about SQL. So SQL has been there for more than 43 years, and we still use it immensely. Being declarative and simple are among the many reasons for this. Let's take an example. Let's assume we have to create a report for revenue for Q3 in a specific location. It would, if we write a SQL query, it would be a single line, single query like below. So if we are to write it in custom code, we'll have to write code to iterate through the transactions table and do this filtering and aggregate the result thereafter. Let's take another example. Let's assume we have to break down by location. So the query would only be changed with the group by clause. So basically SQL is made for joining, filtering, aggregating, and so on. So doing these things in your own custom code leads to writing unnecessary lines of code with no added value. So what if we can bring these capabilities directly into Ballerina language? This is the reason behind language integrated queries. The language integrated queries has a uniform query syntax, which can be applied on different list comprehensions. By using query syntax, you can perform filtering, ordering, and many other operations on data collections with a minimum of code. Okay, let's move on to how to use these language integrated queries for data processing. it's useful to know the structure of the integrated query. It has three components: a from, optional operators, and action. A from clause specifies the data source for the expression. We can have one or more from clauses for every integrated query. Multiple from clauses are used to dig down into deep nested sequences. Optional operators allow the elements to be filtered, sorted, joined, or limited, and so on and so forth. So you can have multiple option operators in between a from clause and action. So action tells what to do with the element selected by the expression. Depending on the action, we have two types of integrated queries, namely query expressions and query actions. If we check the query expressions, it starts with the from clause and ends with the select clause. Query expression allows generating a list, table, string, or XML from iterables. Then query actions starts with the from clause and ends with the do clause. Query action executes a set of statements for each element of their iterator. So if we check the examples here, in the query expression example, we iterate through the nums list. We bind the each iterator instance into int I variable. Then we have added the condition where we check whether we have a remainder. If not, we are adding the variable, the value into a even nums array. In the query action, what we do is we iterate through the nums list array, same as in query expression. Then we have a do clause. Within the do clause, we do a summation. For each iterated value, we are adding it together. So let's move on to query clauses. There are various SQL-like clauses to perform operations. So these clauses, let's go one by one. From clause is used to initialize the query, integrated query, and where is used for a condition. Then let introduces a new variable to the query scope. Then join we can use it to in a equijoin with another data source. Then we have limit. It limits the output from the previous clause, and order by orders the results according to a specific criteria, and we have select for projection. You can go through the Ballerina learn by examples to learn usages of these clauses. It contains a set of incremental materials. So if we go to the, if we check the sources we can use with integrated query, you can use any iterable as the input source for an integrated query with from clause. It can be list, table, string. It can even be a iterable object. Then we'll move on to query expression outputs. Query expressions allow you to generate a list, table, string, XML, or a stream out of as the output. Therefore, query expressions can be used to transform data from a specific structure to another. For example, let's assume we have a table in the from clause, and we use query clause, and we can output it as a XML. So let's move on to a demonstration where we use these concepts. For the demonstration, we are going to read the CSV file as a stream, map the values as structured array, join with a separate data set, and write the integrated data back to a CSV file. For the demo, we are using COVID-19 dataset from our world in data. I'll be running the demo as a single Ballerina file. So if we check the dataset, we have a CSV file with country-based information regarding new cases, new deaths, and so on and so forth. We'll also have another CSV file that have information regarding the country and the vaccines being used there. Okay. Since we are focusing mainly on query expressions within the community call, I have added some util functions to read and write CSV. And anyway, I have commented it out. When we are using it, I'll discuss about the method, the usages, and the logics. Okay, to start, let's add the main function. So what we are going to do first is we are going to read the CSV file into a structured array. So I have already defined the data structure, record, a record called COVID data with ISO code and some other fields. So let's create a COVID data array. Let's add the method. Let's create this function. So from this function, let me create the stream. I'll be reading the CSV file as a stream first using IO file read lines as stream. As the input for this function, I'll be using the CSV file location that I have already added as a constant. Okay. This would output a stream of string, and the completion type would be error nil. While reading the file, it returns a stream or an error. So let me return it to the signature. Okay, now we have read the file to a stream. The special behavior of a stream to be mentioned is the data from the file only will be loaded to memory when the stream is iterated. Okay. Let's first, this stream would contain each line. Then we have to break down this each line into a string array. That means each column data should come into a string array, and we are creating a stream out of that. For that, let me create a string array. The completion type will be arrow only. Let's say line data string. Then let's add the query expression here. We'll be looping through this string and feeding each string. We'll be reading each line, and we'll be breaking it down using regex. We'll be splitting each line. So the CSV file is divided with tabs, so we can use tab to break it down. So now we have a string which contains a string array. That means this string array represents a whole row. Then let's move on to mapping this string array to the created record. So for that, let me look to the let's look through the line data screen. This would this would for each iteration it would contain it would have a string array. Let's say it's column data. So what we are going to do next is we are going to in the data set we have some countries where the new cases are not updated. For example, here as you can see the new cases, so the new deaths are not updated. So what we are going to do is we are going to filter the empty filter the countries that are having empty new cases and new deaths. So if you check it to the column numbers would be 5 and 7. Then what we are going to do is we are going to map it into the record we created. So the COVID data record has ISO code, location, new cases, and new dates. To bind it to the fields, let's have the so the IS code is column data 0th index, and the location is second index. New cases would be column data 7. New dates would be column data 7. So since these are string values, we'll have to pass it. Let me pass the string. Since within the data set the values are in this with decimals, we'll be using decimal passing. Okay, we'll have to return the error to the signature. Okay. Now it says we have error that the output from the core expression is expected to be a COVID data array, but it is actually a COVID data array error or nil. So this is because the completion type of the string is error or nil. Okay. Let me return the data. It says I'm missing token, my bad. Okay. Then it says incompatible expected return type. Since this has a nil here, we'll have that nil here as well. Okay, so reading the COVID data from CSV file, we expected COVID data array, but it has error nil here as well. Let's check whether our current logic works. The COVID data array is COVID data array. Then just let's check whether we have data within the array. Let's just print out the first one. It seems we have error here. Let's check what the error is. We'll have to return error in the main as well. Try running this. It says string value new cases cannot be converted to decimal. The issue here is I forgot to filter out the heading in the CSV file. Let me filter the heading first. Let's say let's consume the first first line. Okay, let's try running again. Okay, now we get data. Okay, okay. So what we are going to do next is in here we are reusing the same, we are referring to the same element in two places. We can avoid this by defining a separate variable using a let clause. Say it's new cases. We can define new cases value as the fifth argument in the array, and let's define something for new bits. So now we can use these variable references within the select. Let me format the code. Okay. Let's use the same in the filtering as well. Okay. So after that, what we are going to do is Let's write this data to a CSV file. For that, I have already created the util function. Write data to CSV channel, which accepts the channel and the data in a string array. Since we are only focusing on the query expression concepts, I have created these utils before time so that it will not consume more time during the demonstration. Let's create a CSV file writer. Writer CSV file channel. Let's open write CSV file. Then we'll have to pass the location to this. I have created the location for the output file in the constants. And it says it returns the channel or an error. As before, let's return it to the signature. Then we can use the util function I have created before time and pass the data that we have created. So for that, let me use the query actions. Let's iterate through the COVID data array. Let's bring this into the narrowed scope, since we don't have to nil lift there, nil lift after. So here, let's say we'll iterate through the COVID data array and we bind it to a variable. We don't need to infer, it would be status. Then we'll have a do close, and within the do close, we'll remove the IO we added before. Within the do close, we can use the write to data channel method, passing the channel, and it accepts a string array. Let's create a string array here with the COVID data record. So since the new cases and the deaths are in decimals, we'll have to convert them to strings. So this should iterate through the COVID data record array and write to a CSV file. Let's try running this one. So the output has been created. Let's have a preview. So the CSV file contains the country ISO code, the location, and the number of new cases and the deaths. But it is missing the headings. Let me add the headings as well. Let's get the first element. And for passing to write the headings, we'll use this first element and we'll get the uh, keys from this data structure. So if we run it again, it should add the headings to the CSV file. Here the headings have been added. Okay, let's try to use a join query, a join clause, and join the stream we created from the CSV file to join with this in-memory table. I have a vaccination CSV file, which has the vaccines that are used in each country. We'll be reading the CSV file into the memory as a in-memory table. Then that table will be used to join with this stream. So for that, I have already created the util method. So what this does is we are calling IO open readable CSV file and passing the location for the vaccine information, and it will give a readable CSV channel, and we call get table passing the record type and the type of column headings that needs to be matched with the record. So let me, I have already created the vaccination record that has location, ISO code, and vaccines. I'll be mapping these three columns to that record. Okay, I have already created the module level variable to hold that in memory table so that we can access it in our query. Okay, let me preload this data, calling that method in the main method. It's returning a nil error. Let me return it back to signature if it is an error. Okay, now let's go back to the query, and in the query let's add the join clause. We'll be joining the table. The table constraint type is vaccination data and the name is vaccination table. So for each iteration in the join, the table, each element will be mapped to vaccination data record. Let's call the variable as vac record, and in vaccination table. Okay, and as the joining condition, let's say we have ISO code in the stream, and we have the ISO code in the location vaccine information table as well. So we'll be using ISO code as the joining condition. So here, let's say the ISO code in the stream is 0th index equals record ISO code. So this way we can access the VAC record in select. So let's use this VAC record vaccine data vaccines field and add it into COVID data. Let's first add the field called vaccines to COVID data record. Let's go back to the tool. Let's bind the vaccines field. It should be record vaccines. So this should create an record array with the merge information that includes the vaccines. Okay. Let me add the log here so that we can find out when the CSV file has finished writing. Writing CSV. Okay, let me try. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention. So when we return this COVID data array, it will be coming to here, and we'll be writing it into the CSV. So we have to add the vaccine information here as well to be written to the CSV. Let me run the Ballerina file. Okay, it has created the CSV file. Let us look at the CSV file. Okay, now we can see a separate column for vaccines for each country. So now let's go back to the query. As if you check the the data is not in an order. Let's try to order the data from the according to the new dates so that we can identify the country with the most dates for the day. Okay, let's add the order by query, order by clause, and I'll be ordering it by new dates. So at this level, since we don't have new dates as a number, let me add the let clause and introduce a variable. Let's say decimal. Let's say new dates num. Let's pass the string here and create the variable, and we can use this variable thereafter. I'll ordering it according to descending order. Okay, I can reuse the same in here. Okay, let's try running the Ballerina file again. Okay, we check the file. The order has been changed. So the data has been ordered according to the new dates. The highest new dates is seen in US. So that's the end of the demo. Let's continue our discussion. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. At the moment, we are planning to introduce the group by clause and aggregation for query expressions. Stream support is limited to bounded stream. We are planning to extend it to support unbounded streams. Once we do, we'll be able to do interesting event-driven use cases with Ballerina. Let's move on to the open discussion. We can start the open discussion now. Myself and the team are available to help you with any questions.
Thanks, Shiran. Just to remind everyone again that if you'd like to unmute yourself and join in the discussion, please feel free to do so now, or you can always just continue just sending through some questions via the chat. Shiran and the team, there are a couple of questions via the chat. I know some of the team members have already answered some of the questions, but maybe we could also address some of them.
Okay. What is the completion type? So the completion type of a stream is how the stream would end, whether it's whether it can end with nil value or error. In the bounded case, it should always have nil as nil within the completion type. Any other questions?
There were some questions run on YouTube as well. We had a question from Naveen asking,
Okay.
can we combine query expressions and actions? Again, something Hasta has already addressed, but maybe you can mention that. So the question is from Naveen. It's, can we combine query expressions and actions?
Yes, we can have nested query expressions and query actions, but the thing is we don't have output from the query action. So we'll have to nest it accordingly. So basically the from clauses are the same. So because the query action doesn't have an output either than the nil or the error, we'll have to nest it accordingly to get an output within the query expression.
I think there's also a second question to Naveen's from Naveen as well, which I've just sent across. How does stream-in and array conversions affect while reading a large file?
Okay, when we are reading from reading as a stream, the whole file will not be read to the memory as at that moment. It will be read when we iterate through the stream. But in array case, it will be loaded into the memory. So that's the difference.
So to add more to that, and we have a special iterable object that you can extend and implement stream implementer. So there you can actually implement the stream implementer and load data lazily. Like you don't need to load everything into memory when you load data from a file or something. So if you want to process them on the go, then you can implement this stream implementer and process them. And of course, when we are loading that to array, then we will anyway have to read everything and load that into that array. So that's how actually we have implemented the stream that we use in CSV reading. And
yes, file reader is within the file reader to a stream. We are using stream implementer to read line by line.
There's no more questions, I believe, via the chat. So if there are no more further questions, we can actually wrap up this community call for today. But if you do have any further questions that may come up later on, please share them via our Slack channel. And as Sharon did mention, we will update the demo and we will be sharing the recording via YouTube. So yeah, if you'd like to watch the recording, just stay tuned for that. We will share it with everyone. Just we'll update you via Twitter or our newsletter. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining this session. We do hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, we hope to see you at our next call. So thank you everyone, and thanks Sharon.
Thank you.